A life cut short. Otto Warmbier, the American college student who was imprisoned by North Korea, has passed away. Shocked and devastated, the mother of a man accused of driving into a crowd of Muslim worshippers in London speaks out. And a warning from Russia. Moscow says it would target US and coalition aircraft after the US shot down a Syrian warplane. Hello, I'm Linda Kincaid, and this is CNN Today. Well, less than a week after he was released from North Korea, US college student Otto Warmbier has passed away. His parents making the announcement just a few hours ago. Their 22-year-old son was arrested and held in North Korea for 17 months after the government said he tried to steal a political propaganda sign from his hotel in Pyongyang in 2016. Warmbier was medically evacuated and returned to the US last week in what doctors are calling a persistent vegetative state. Well, US President Donald Trump spoke last hour about Otto Warmbier and North Korea. Here's what he had to say.
I just wanted to pass on word that Otto Warmbier has just passed away. He spent a year and a half in North Korea. A lot of bad things happened, but at least we got him home to be with his parents, where they were so happy to see him, even though he was in very tough condition, but he just passed away a little while ago. It's a brutal regime, and we'll be able to handle it.
Donald Trump speaking there. Well, US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has also issued a statement on Warmbier's passing, saying, quote, "I extend my condolences to the Warmbier family and offer my prayers as they enter a time of grief no parent should ever know. We hold North Korea accountable for Otto Warmbier's unjust imprisonment and demand the release of the 3 other Americans who have been illegally detained." Well, Otto Warmbier never regained consciousness during his brief time back home. But as Brian Todd reports, his parents say he changed just a little bit for the better during those final few days.
By the time Otto Warmbier was in a U.S. hospital, doctors said his condition was dire.
No signs of understanding language, responding to verbal commands, or awareness of his surroundings. He has not spoken. He has not engaged in any purposeful movements or behaviors.
Tonight, Warmbier's parents say their son has, quote, completed his journey home, that Otto Warmbier died today at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Time. The family says when he arrived in Cincinnati last week in a vegetative state, Warmbier's face looked anguished. But within a day, they say, his face changed. He was at peace, they say. Warmbier's doctors told reporters they'd discovered he had lost much of his brain tissue due to cardiopulmonary arrest, and that 2 brain scans sent by the North Koreans suggested he'd been in a vegetative state for at least 14 months.
The earliest images are dated April 2016. Based upon our analysis of those images, the brain injury likely occurred in the preceding weeks.
Experts say while they're surprised North Korea would allow an American being held to reach such critical condition, they say mistreatment in North Korean jails is not uncommon.
We know that they apply very brutal treatment, torture, beating, rape to their own people and also to foreigners who are held in custody.
All of a sudden, he was thrown into this hellhole. So anything is possible. He could have suffered shock when he was sentenced to hard labor. He could have been beaten. He could have tried to take his own life. Whatever the circumstances, it is likely the result of the fact that the North Koreans put him in this situation.
There are key questions still unanswered tonight after Warmbier's death. Why did Kim's regime keep Warmbier's condition a secret for so long?
Perhaps they waited hoping that he would come out of the coma. He didn't. Eventually they panicked.
And how might the United States retaliate for the death of this 22-year-old University of Virginia student who the North Koreans had sentenced to hard labor for allegedly pulling down a propaganda banner in a hotel?
So one reason to be careful about military retaliation is the fact that North Korea now has missiles and nuclear weapons that could strike Japan, Korea, and potentially threaten the United States. The other reason is there are other Americans who are hostages and in prison who we also want to get out.
Well, CNN's Paula Hancock is in the South Korean capital and joins us live from Seoul. Paula, Warmbier was held for 17 months in detention, and the North Koreans say that for 12 of those months he was in a coma. There's a lot of anger here. What's the reaction there in the region?
Well, Linda, we're still waiting for official reaction, but certainly what we're seeing on social media and the media itself is speculation as to what this means, what would come next. There is speculation that this would mean that in America there would be support for a more hardline stance against North Korea, clearly suggesting that the relationship, which is at an all-time low between the US and North Korea, could deteriorate even further. We've heard from US Senator John McCain, for example, saying that, let's state the facts plainly, Otto Warmbier, an American citizen, was murdered by the Kim Jong-un regime. So this is clearly the assumption here, and there's concern as well. We heard from the intelligence agency, the NIS, through a lawmaker just last week. There are 6 South Koreans who are currently being held in North Korea. They say 3 of them are defectors and 3 are pastors on missionary activities. We know there are 3 Americans also being held, 1 Canadian. So looking forward, the concern here is what kind of condition will those people be held in? And certainly there will be a push, we've heard from the State Department, to try and gain access to the other Americans that are being held. Rex Tillerson, as Secretary of State, saying it's a very delicate situation last week when asked about it.
We know that the US is trying to put pressure on China, which is, of course, North Korea's biggest trading partner, to rein in the regime. Do we know if the US has ever leaned on China to help with negotiations to free captive Americans?
We don't know what happens exactly behind the scenes, but it is quite unlikely, given that that China, for example, when North Koreans escape North Korea, when they defect, if China catches them, they quite often send them back to North Korea, and quite often they are punished harshly, according to other defectors who have made that journey. China does not see them as defectors; they see them as illegal in their country. So there doesn't appear to be There doesn't appear as though that would be a viable option for the United States. Obviously, the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang is the one route that the United States uses the most. Washington and North Korea don't have diplomatic ties, so Washington relies on the Swedish embassy to be able to go and visit their citizens when they are detained in North Korea. But it's unlikely that they would be trying to pressure China to put any pressure on North Korea. They need China when it comes to the nuclear and missile program. They need China to be putting pressure on Kim Jong-un to try and stop that program, to try and force sanctions, to make the international sanctions work. But when it comes to detained Americans, it's really the Swedish embassy that Washington relies on.
All right, Paula Hancock's for us live in Seoul. Good to have you on this story for us. Thank you very much. We're turning now to investigations underway in London and in Paris after 2 startling attacks. In the British capital, authorities say a man rammed his van into a crowd of Muslim worshippers, killing at least 1 person. The driver is now being held on suspicion of terrorism offences. And in Paris, police say a car deliberately slammed into a police van before bursting into flames. The French Interior Minister says the car contained weapons and explosives. Well, first, let's head to London, where our Phil Black is standing by with the latest developments on the investigation. Phil, we know that the man accused is a 47-year-old father. What else can you tell us?
Yeah, Linda, the British media have named him as Darren Osborne, a 47-year-old father of 4 who lives in Cardiff, Wales. And journalists have spoken to his neighbours there, who have expressed great shock at seeing him and recognising him in the video that shows him being wrestled to the ground on the road just a short distance up behind me, not long after his white van allegedly ploughed through a crowd of people. Now, CNN affiliate ITV has also spoken by phone to his mother. This is what she said.
I'm not going to defend him, but it's my son, and it's a terrible, terrible shock. And it's not just robbing the bank or It's an atrocity, and I just, at the moment in time, I can't cope with it. I can't.
A surprise also, his actions are a surprise also to the authorities here, because the government has told us that Osborne wasn't known to the police or the security and intelligence services as someone who had extremist views or posed any sort of threat. He hadn't shown up on the radar in any way. And so their job is to now get to the bottom of that and determine precisely what it is he does believe in, what could have led him to allegedly behave in the way that he's accused of doing. And I think there are potentially hints in some of the accounts that we've heard from people who watched the attack unfold, and also those who actually got involved, who intervened, who, after he's accused of driving through the crowd, they say they actually grabbed him from the vehicle, wrestled him to the ground, and detained him, held him there until the police arrived. People who did that say they asked him why he was doing this, to which he is said to have replied, "Because you deserve this. You guys deserve this." That's why the community here, particularly the Muslim community, believes that they were very specifically, very deliberately targeted in this attack, Linda.
Phil, there's no doubt that Londoners are very resilient. How are they coming together? We heard some pretty strong words today from the Mayor and the Prime Minister.
Yeah, so all levels of leadership in this city and this country have really done their best today to condemn this attack and to make the point that it is just as abhorrent as all the other terrorist attacks that have taken place here in recent months. But this one is problematic because it does appear to be an attack that is in direct response to those Islamist attacks at London Bridge, at Westminster, and of course even in Manchester as well. And in the wake of those attacks, so many people here in London have gone out of their way to say this is a city that will not be divided, where tolerance still reigns supreme, where people will still be accepted, and in particular where people will not be persecuted based upon their faith and simply because of the actions of a small, violent, irrational few. This clearly shows that there remains tension in this country as a result of the attacks that have taken place. It cuts against the grain of all attempts to still speak in very inclusive ways. But what we're seeing here today and through the night, and I think you can see behind me here, there's a growing memorial here. We're still seeing people of all faiths and creeds come here to pay their respects to the people who were hurt in this attack, and to continue to try and make that point, as the Prime Minister has done today, that this city and this country will not be divided. Linda, back to you.
All right, Phil Black for us there on the streets of London, staying up late for us. Thank you very much. Well, we are learning new details about the man Paris police say tried to hit them with his car on Monday. Now, according to a CNN affiliate, the driver was under a French terror radicalization watch list. Police say the armed man deliberately tried to ram his car into a police van in the Champs-Élysées. It is the 5th such attack on security forces there in 4 months. CNN's Melissa Bell has the details from Paris.
This is the car that drove down the Champs-Élysées just after 3:30 Paris time this afternoon, overtaking a police convoy and ramming twice into a police vehicle. The intention was clearly to cause far more damage than in the end was caused, since the car was filled with explosives and weaponry. In fact, amateur footage taken at the scene immediately after the accident shows plumes of orange smoke emerging from the car. The only fatality in the end was that of the assailant himself. He has now died. Authorities have also confirmed that they've opened an anti-terror investigation, the 5th in as many months, and the 5th time that security forces specifically have been targeted here in France. Melissa Bell, CNN in Paris.
Well, soaring tensions in Syria have stepped up yet another notch a day after the US shot down a regime warplane. Syria's ally, Russia, is now warning that jets from the US-led coalition could be considered targets. Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr looks at how the US is responding.
U.S. pilots flying over Syria now on the lookout for Russian airplanes or missile threats following the weekend shootdown by a U.S. Navy F/A-18 Super Hornet of a Syrian warplane. This because the Kremlin threatened that any U.S. warplane operating in certain areas of Syria would be considered a threat. When the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was asked if he was confident that Russia would not shoot down a U.S. warplane, the answer was carefully worded.
I'm confident that we are still communicating between our operations center and the Russian Federation Operations Center, and I'm also confident that our forces have the capability to take care of themselves.
Defense Secretary James Mattis taking the threat seriously, his spokesperson issuing a statement. As a result of recent encounters involving pro-Syrian regime and Russian forces, we have taken prudent measures to reposition aircraft over Syria. The Pentagon won't offer details, but the goal is clear. Get U.S.-backed ground forces to push ISIS out.
They're sending warnings to the Syrians, to the Iranians, and to the Russians that this offensive must be the top priority and it cannot be hindered.
When a Syrian warplane attacked those U.S.-backed forces on the ground, the U.S. reacted. It began Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Pro-Syrian regime forces attacked the U.S.-backed fighters near the city of Tabqa, a key area on the way to Raqqa, the ISIS capital, driving them from their fighting positions. U.S. aircraft flew in, launching flares to scare off the pro-Assad units. The U.S. also contacted the Russians to try to stop the fighting. At 6:43 p.m., a Syrian Su-22 dropped bombs near the U.S.-backed fighters. It was immediately shot down, the coalition said, by that U.S. Navy aircraft as a matter of self-defense.
That was our Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr reporting there. Well, Britain's plan to leave the European Union is in the spotlight this Monday in Brussels. The first day of Brexit talks got underway with a number of major issues on the table, including trade, immigration and Northern Ireland's border with the Republic of Ireland. While the EU says the clock is ticking, Britain's Brexit secretary says he's optimistic that the talks will result in a positive outcome.
There's a long way to go, but we're off to a promising start. We have taken the first critical steps together. Now we have a shared responsibility to deliver quick and substantive progress.
Well, the two sides have less than 2 years to negotiate and come to a deal. Well, still ahead on CNN Today, Cuba responds to Donald Trump's change in policy towards the communist island. What the Castro government is saying, that story coming up next in our live report, plus conflicting comments from President Trump's personal lawyer as the Russia probe moves forward. Stay with us right here on CNN Today.
On the next Vital Signs. You ever wonder how good your memory really is? We're exploring memory and the mind with world champion memory athletes.
Okay, let's get this competition started.
If you told me that I could memorize a deck of cards in, 16, 17 seconds, I would have said, that's nuts. But it's just a matter of practice.
See how they train their brains, what we can all learn about improving our own memories.
Vital Signs, Wednesday on CNN, in association with Dubai Healthcare City.
New York City, the world's financial capital, where history is made and tomorrow is planned.
And this is the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. From here, we'll bring you the events moving the business world.
Creating jobs, building economies, and shifting wealth around the globe. Live from the New York Stock Exchange, CNN Money with Maggie Lake and the new Quest Express. Weeknights on CNN.
Face straight to me.
As well. So you might want a bit of.
Oh, is that quite nice with Stella with the gold? Yeah. That's good. That's good.
They make everyone look the best, I think.
All the way straight, when you're coming down with the legs open.
It's not like the best of me, myself, but a character that I would like to be, or it's another version of me.
She truly understands photography.
And she inhabits any kind of character. We've done so many characters with her, haven't she?
Yeah.
And each one, she just, she becomes that person.
I mean, she'll turn around and say, I don't think that character would wear that. She'll speak her mind to the editor, or she would say to us, are you sure you want me lying there like that? What about like this, So she really plays with the idea, and that's really good. That's really exciting and inspiring.
Welcome back to CNN Today. The Cuba government is responding to Donald Trump's tough talk with defiance. Havana says the U.S. president's speech last week in Miami was grotesque, with rhetoric straight out of the Cold War. Well, CNN's Patrick Ottman joins us now live from Havana, and Cuba has rejected President Trump's policy, and they did not mince their words.
No, they did not. Bruno Rodriguez may be Cuba's top diplomat, but he was very undiplomatic in his speech today, firing back at Donald Trump, saying that it was a grotesque spectacle, that Trump was poorly advised. And what Mr. Rodriguez took such affront to was, of course, last Friday, Donald Trump had come out with his new Cuba policy, saying that it was going to be much tougher for Americans to come to Cuba and do business here. But going farther than that, really signaling to the Cuban government and the Cuban people that the détente started under the Obama administration had come to an end and that he expected concessions. He said that the United States now holds all the cards and he'd be much tougher on Cuba than previous administrations. So in his remarks today, Bruno Rodriguez said that Cuba and the U.S. would continue to work together on areas of mutual interest, but Donald Trump was severely mistaken if he thought that he would be getting any concessions immediately from the Cuban people. In fact, he said that one of the things that Trump had demanded last week, the immediate return of U.S. fugitives, including a woman named Assata Shakur, who's been convicted of murdering an American state trooper, that would not be happening, that she and others had received political asylum, and there was no way that they would be sent back, essentially signaling to Donald Trump that if he expected his tough talk to lead to immediate results, he's going to be waiting. Cuba very, very defiant today, Linda.
So, Patrick, what does this mean for U.S.-Cuban relations? Are we back to the pre-Obama era, the Cold War tensions?
Certainly that's what Donald Trump would like us to believe. He said he canceled President Obama's deal, and that's just not true, because the majority of the things that President Obama did, remembering before President Obama made his deal with Cuba, started secret negotiations with Cuba, there was no U.S. embassy here. There were not direct flights from the U.S. You didn't have the vast increase of numbers of American visitors to the island. So there have been some very significant changes. President Trump is not rolling back the majority of those changes, but certainly the atmosphere just in a few days has completely shifted, and it does feel very Cold War era. And I think for Cubans who are weary of these two countries duking it out over the years, there's a lot of concerns that it's just going to continue to deteriorate. Certainly a Cuban government saying they're not giving an inch.
All right, Patrick Ottman for us live in Havana. No doubt this story will not go away. We will talk to you soon. Thank you. Well, in Washington, seemingly conflicting statements from President Donald Trump and one of his personal attorneys about whether he's under investigation in the special counsel's Russian probe. Well, on Monday, the president didn't seem willing to clear it up. CNN's Jessica Schneider reports.
Tonight, conflicting answers from President Trump's legal team to questions about whether or not the president is under investigation. He tweeted this Friday: "I am being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Witch hunt." One of the president's lawyers, Jay Sekulow, making the rounds on the Sunday talk shows, telling CNN's Jake Tapper this.
Let me be clear, the president's not under investigation.
So the president said, "I am under investigation," even though he isn't under investigation?
That response on social media was in response to the Washington Post piece. It's that simple. The president is not under investigation.
But he told Fox News this.
So he's being investigated for taking the action that the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General recommended him to take.
You've now said that he is being investigated after saying that you didn't.
No.
You just said,
no, he's
sir,
not being investigated.
you just said that he's being investigated.
Today, yet another response. Sekulow on CNN criticizing the Washington Post for using 5 anonymous sources to back up its story that Special Counsel Robert Mueller was investigating the president for possible obstruction of justice in the firing of FBI Director James Comey.
Those reports in the Washington Post were false. The legal team has not been notified of investigation.
But just because you haven't been notified doesn't mean you're not under investigation. There's no duty to inform you.
no duty to tell in the sense of an obligation to tell, but you know how it works in Washington. If you were a target, if you were being investigated, you would be told really quickly into the investigation process.
The White House is also being elusive about the existence of any tapes from inside the Oval Office. Press Secretary Sean Spicer said it's possible the president could have an answer by the end of this week. Friday is the deadline for the White House to turn those tapes over to the House Intelligence Committee if they exist. The committee has also requested Comey's memos on his conversations with the president by the end of the week.
One way or another, we need to get an answer. And if we can't get an answer, then I think we need to, we'll ultimately need to subpoena those potential documents to make sure that we have them.
And Jared Kushner could be changing his legal team since his lawyer was a partner with Robert Mueller at a D.C. law firm before Mueller became special counsel. Kushner's attorney issued this statement. After the appointment of our former partner Robert Mueller as special counsel, we advised Mr. Kushner to obtain the independent advice of a lawyer with appropriate experience as to whether he should continue with us as his counsel.
Well, that was CNN's Jessica Schneider reporting there. Well, 3 nations in Southeast Asia are taking new steps to fight the threat from ISIS-inspired terror groups. The cooperation among the Philippines, Malaysia and Indonesia is showing just how serious that threat has become. Southeast Asian terror cells aligned with ISIS are becoming bolder, now engaged in a month-long battle in the city of Marawi in the southern Philippines. Experts say the vast coastlines of the region's countries are porous, so now the Philippines, Malaysia and Indonesia say they will begin joint patrols and information sharing to curb the influence of the terror groups.
Here, the 3 of us would like to send a message as clear as possible to the Islamic State. While we are leading our respective countries, we will send them a message that we will not let them get even an inch near our seas.
The start of the initiative was marked with a ceremony aboard an Indonesian naval vessel. It included a demonstration of Indonesian soldiers storming a hijacked cargo ship. Indonesia's military chief described how the new agreement will work.
Whichever country is the nearest. For example, if we see someone send out an SOS in the Philippine Sea, but it's close enough to Indonesia, we will cooperate and report this to 3 different commands. We can help. If we're trying to catch someone who runs away from Indonesia to the Philippines in hot pursuit, we can report it to them and then continue pursuing.
The Philippines armed forces have been battling the militants for weeks. The army says so far nearly 350 people have been killed in the fighting. And Indonesia's military chief says the cooperation will help with the speed and accuracy of information which is needed to anticipate the possible escape of militants out of Malawi. Well, still to come, we'll take a closer look at the mosque near the attack in London that's left at least 1 person dead. We'll have those details just ahead.
She had a natural curiosity that motivated her move from the familiar and called her to see the world. Along the way, she began to tell stories, whether those stories were far from her roots or close at heart, whether they made her smile or tested her strength. Storytelling is what took her there and got her here. Newsstream with Christy Lou Stout, tonight on CNN.
Breaking news, some serious fighting going down. Russia is purging its spy ranks, a dramatic day in the British capital. This is the world right now. Donald Trump proclaimed America first. The results in the Austrian presidential election, some incredible moments in Nigeria. talk about what's motivating this vote. You see what happened in Britain. Do you still think it's what France needs? The largest free trade deal in history in the rear view mirror.
I'm Delia Gallagher in Vatican City, and this is CNN.
Hello and welcome to CNN Today. I'm Linda Kincaid. Let's get you straight to our top stories. The mother of the suspect in the London attack says she's shocked and she's not going to defend her son. UK media outlets report that 47-year-old Darren Osborne of Wales is being held on suspicion of terrorism offences. He's accused of ramming a van into a crowd of Muslim worshippers. We know at least one person was killed, 10 others injured in what the British Prime Minister is calling a sickening attack. Police in Paris say the man who tried to hit them with his car on Monday was under surveillance. That's according to a CNN affiliate. It happened on Paris's famed boulevard, the Champs-Élysées. Police say the man deliberately tried to ram his car into a police van. The driver who was killed was apparently on a French terror radicalization watch list. Otto Warmbier, the American college student who was detained in North Korea, died a few hours ago, according to his family. He was 22 years old. Warmbier returned to the U.S. last Tuesday. Doctors here said he was in a vegetative state and had suffered severe brain damage during his 17 months in detention in North Korea. Well, last hour I spoke with former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Bill Richardson. He's been to North Korea many times to try to get Americans released.
One of my representatives from my foundation, we worked very hard to get Otto released, was with a family in the last few days. Very sad because this is a wonderful family. This is a very fine young man. But I'm angry. I'm angry at the North Koreans for having kept them almost a year without notifying either the family, the U.S. government, the Swedish government that represents us there. They could call him a prisoner of war, which they did, but it is almost a crime against humanity that they held him for so long, possibly without proper medical care and without letting the United States or anybody else know. So I'm very angry and at the same time so sad because we got to know the Warmbier family as we try to get Otto Warmbier to come home from North Korea. We offered humanitarian assistance to the North Koreans. We met with the North Koreans 20 times in New York at the United Nations mission. They never told us about any of this. So I am very sad, but at the same time angry.
So when you met with them, did they give you any information about his condition at all?
No, they gave us no information. We tried to get me to go to North Korea to try to visit him. My representatives from my foundation in late November went to North Korea, asked to see him, but they wouldn't let us see him. Now we know why. He was in a coma. The North Koreans didn't want anybody to know that he was in a coma. They hid it from the international community, from the world.
Well, that was the former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Bill Richardson there. Well, for more on the terror attack in London, the city's mayor is making it clear his city is united and will not be defeated. That is the sentiment, and it was echoed on a handwritten note at the Finsbury Park station. Under the service information, the London Underground staff added this quote of the day: "Tough times don't last. Tough people do. Stick together, all of us." Well, witnesses say the attack near the mosque in North London was deliberately targeting Muslims, and it has shaken the local community there. But the Finsbury Park Mosque and the surrounding area have been through hard times before. Clarissa Ward has more.
Finsbury Park sits in one of the most diverse regions of London, home to historic Irish and Afro-Caribbean communities and large Muslim and Jewish populations. That's one of the reasons this attack feels so raw to the local people, and Met Police Commissioner Cressida Dick paid tribute to that community cohesion.
This is a highly integrated truly diverse and multicultural place. The people who perpetrate attacks like this think they will break our society down and cause division between us, and they won't do that, and they won't win. This is a very resilient city, and this is a very, very resilient set of communities.
The Finsbury Park Mosque is at the heart of this community. The Imam, Mohammed Mahmoud, has been praised for helping to apprehend the attacker and keep him safe from an angry public till the police came.
A police van drove past by coincidence, so we flagged them down. We told them the situation, that there's a man, he's restrained, he mowed down a group of people with his van, and there's a mob attempting to hurt him. If you don't take him, God forbid, he might be seriously hurt. So we pushed people away from him until he was safely taken by police into custody and put into the back of the van.
In 2014, the mosque became only the third place of worship to be awarded a visible quality mark by the Charity Commission, awarded only to faith organizations that are inclusive and welcoming. An achievement all the more remarkable considering how notorious the mosque was in the previous decade. It was closed in 2003 after concerns it was a hotbed of extremism. The imam was the notorious Abu Hamza, who was convicted of 11 terrorism charges in the United States. Richard Reed, who attempted to blow up an American Airlines flight in 2002 with a shoe bomb, worshipped there. But the Finsbury Park community has roots that run deep, and its resilience through the decades is testament to its strength.
Clarissa Ward reporting there. Well, this terror attack is the fourth in the UK in the past 3 months, and the first that appears to have directly targeted Muslims. Well, earlier this month, a van plowed into pedestrians on the London Bridge. The three attackers then went after innocent civilians with knives, killing 8 people before they were shot and killed by police. On May 22nd, a suicide bomber killed 22 people and injured dozens more after an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. And in March, in another vehicle attack, a car struck a group of pedestrians on Westminster Bridge outside London's Parliament. 5 people, including a police officer, were killed before police were able to kill the attacker. Authorities say all 3 attacks were motivated by Islamist extremism. Well, still to come, fire crews are scrambling to contain a massive and deadly wildfire in Portugal. We'll have the latest on the intense firefight just ahead. You're watching CNN Today.
CNN Equestrian Global Champions is in the south of France, in Cannes, mixing glamour and top-class sport. This is one of 15 stunning locations around the world, which makes up the Global Champions Tour and Global Champions League.
CNN Equestrian Global Champions, Wednesday on CNN. CNN Supercharged. Plug into the first ever all-electric racing series, Formula E. Go behind the scenes with Nikki Shields in the cities hosting the E-Prix action. Meet the drivers racing through downtown street circuits across the globe. And check out the technology driving us all towards a greener future. CNN Supercharged. Today on CNN, in association with DHL. All new Inside Africa. Unlocking the mysteries behind the continent you thought you knew. Former hunters in Zambia now working to protect the wildlife around them.
So working with the community is absolutely essential to the survival of the elephants.
Inside Africa, today, only on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank. Inside the world of horse racing on CNN's Winning Post.
This month we're in England for the race that has lent its name to many of the great races around the world, the Epsom Derby.
Sunday on CNN, in association with Longy.
back. Well, more than 1,000 firefighters are now on the front lines battling the worst wildfire to scorch Portugal in decades. At least 62 people have died in the fire. Dozens of others have been injured, including several firefighters. Now, this fire started over the weekend, some 200 kilometres north of Lisbon. Authorities say lightning strikes sparked it. Extreme heat, dry conditions, strong winds are fueling those flames. And this fire isn't the only one. Authorities say some 40 forest fires are now burning across the country. Well, the magnitude of the fires in Portugal are being described as a human tragedy never before seen in that region. But will Mother Nature be able to help? Well, Tom Sater is here with the forecast. And Tom, how is it looking in the days ahead?
I think we're getting more help from surrounding countries than we are from Mother Nature, Linda. But last year we had 100,000 hectares burned in Portugal alone, and we've seen the pictures. I remember last year covering the wildfires on the island of Madeira, where 3 lost their lives, 5,400 hectares were scorched, and 40 homes were destroyed, but nothing on the scale like this. 1966, a fire west of Lisbon took 25 lives of soldiers. But again, just the stories are it's heartbreaking what we're hearing. And they think maybe the death toll could rise as they go village to village. But at least we're getting some air support now from France, Spain. Italy is now getting involved as well. Every country in Europe has got some kind of a wildfire. It's Mother Nature's way of house cleaning after a cold and dry winter. But nothing quite like this. The hills and valleys create their own microclimate. Winds are erratic. And you can see the smoke plume to the north. So there's been a pretty good strong wind out of the south, but fires add to the erratic winds, and there's just no telling where they're going to go. And with the villages everywhere, part of the problem now, the authorities say that getting the alerts and the warnings to some villages, they were hard pressed because a lot of the power lines and even communication towers were melting. So that is a big concern, but you can see just how many there are and the need for the firefighters that are extremely exhausted mentally, emotionally too. They've had to bury a few of their own. Others are in critical conditions. That's the number of over 54 that are now injured. Homeowners are doing what they can. And the stories we're hearing of families, even with elderlies, getting into water tanks surrounded by flames just to stay alive. It's just amazing. The heat goes all the way up to the north, so there will be more fires, but nothing like the heat we're seeing in Spain and Portugal. Madrid, 38 degrees. They should be at 25. Lisbon should be at 25. They're 12 degrees warmer than they should be. Even Paris, 33, and London, 32. We are hopeful we could see a few thunderstorms, and that's what satellite is showing us. Unfortunately, they're just hit and miss and not in the areas of concern. A lot of the victims are in the hospitals in Porto and in Lisbon as well. Now, the winds are the one element that Mother Nature is helping out with. They're stronger down off the coast of Sevilla, but not in this area. So lighter winds are good. We need to get the humidity up. Unfortunately, one very hot day for Tuesday at 33. And no chance of rain. So again, the heat's just going to continue to bake in this area. We're hopeful that we can get some help here by hopefully the end of the weekend
I hope so for those people there. All right, Tom Sater, thanks so much for that report. Well, the full autopsy report on actress Carrie Fisher reveals she had multiple drugs in her system when she died. Toxicology reports found evidence that the 60-year-old Star Wars actress may have used cocaine within 72 hours of her death last December. They also mentioned heroin and methadone. Fisher was very open about her battles with addiction and mental health issues, but the LA County Medical Examiner concluded that sleep apnea and other undetermined factors contributed to her death. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this edition of CNN Today. I'm Linda Kincaid. Stay tuned. World Sport with Kate Riley is just ahead, and I'll have an update of our top headlines at the top of the hour.